If you get too close to the sun, you will burn. This is the story of Premier Protein. So I'll provide further details on what I meant in an introductory statement a bit later in this content, but on May 7th of 2024, BellRing Brands updated the public markets by releasing its fiscal 2024 second quarter earnings report that covered the period ending March 31st of 2024. I'll be utilizing the financial information from those documents along with the notes I took from listening to the earnings conference call, and then also any publicly disclosed relevant news to obviously update you on the recent performance of the brands in that functional CPG portfolio. But I'll also kind of use it as a backdrop to discuss market insights within the active nutrition product formats of liquids and powders. But let's start off with a quick rundown of the BellRing Brands fiscal 2024 second quarter revenue numbers. Net sales for BellRing Brands this quarter were $494.6 million. That was up a remarkable 28.3% year over year, which is comprised of a positive 42.7% increase in volume, but it was offset by a 14.4% decrease in pricing and product mix. If we're looking at this from a quarter over quarter sequential perspective, BellRing Brands saw its revenue increase just under 15%. If you wanted to look at these numbers by product format, RTD shakes made up 80.4% of this quarter's total sales, powders were 17%, and the remaining 2.6% came from other formats like bars that are sold internationally under the PowerBar brand name. Looking at the quarterly sales by brand, Premier Protein was up 33.8% year over year. This was coming from a hefty 44.9% volume increase, but there was again an offset caused by a decrease in pricing and product mix. If we focus on just the Premier Protein RTDs, that product format saw just about the same year over year growth and impacts to net sales drivers that the entire brand performance saw that I just kind of mentioned. Now shifting to the Dymatize Nutrition brand, it saw quarterly net sales increase 4.6% year over year. This was due to both volume increases stemming from both distribution gains and organic growth, which kind of talk about a bit later in this content, and then an increase in pricing and product mix. But as I normally do in these quarterly BellRing Brands content pieces, I wanted to dive deeper into firstly the Premier Protein RTD shakes business activity, and then also cover the protein powders from both Premier Protein and Dymatize. Overall, the RTD liquid subcategory of convenient nutrition has shown extremely strong growth during the last 4 years compared to historical rates. That doesn't mean it has blowout over blowout monthly or quarterly performance as marked by short-lived slowdowns in mid-2022 and arguably in this current reporting period. Regardless, Premier Protein has faced a share of episodic challenges during these last several years, from severe capacity constraints that limited available flavor variants and usage of trade promotions to even a voluntary product recall. But Premier Protein has been able to overcome each efficiently, as they are some of the best operators within the functional CPG space. In terms of retail consumption growth by channel, the largest for Premier Protein RTDs would be wholesale clubs, which grew 24.8% year over year during the quarter. The brand's other major sales channels for RTDs are mass retail, grocery, and e-commerce, were up 44.1%, 10.9%, and 47.3% year over year, respectively. Overall, Premier Protein RTD's consumption trends for both tracked and untracked channels were up 28.8% year over year. That helped improve the last 52-week consumption trend up from 28% last quarter to now over 30%. As is the normal fiscal 2 pattern for Premier Protein that covers the new year, new you buying pattern, consumption jumped quarter over quarter and outpaced shipments, albeit only slightly this year. Even with RTD shake production improvements continuing at Premier Protein, executing 2 successful club promotions in 1 quarter for the first time in 3 years, paired with new flavor innovations, it kind of briefly pushed total distribution points to all-time highs in January and February before falling due to temporary out-of-stocks late in the quarter and into April. More on that later in this content. Household penetration for the entire Premier Protein brand reached an all-time high of 18.4%. This recent brand household penetration growth is being fueled by promotional activity restarting, thus bringing deal-seeking buyers back towards the Premier Protein brand. Moreover, it's important to note that Premier Protein does lead the RTD liquid subcategory and entire convenient nutrition category in household penetration. Premier Protein market share spiked to around 24% during the wholesale club promotion, but settled in at 21% of total RTD liquids category of convenient nutrition. As just mentioned, the steady production across the full range of flavors, plus new launches and promotional activity returning, Premier Protein should see its market share climb even further to all time highs throughout 2024. Now, let's shift into examining the recent BellRing Brands performance of its protein powder SKUs. And just like the RTD liquid subcategory of convenient nutrition, the same underlying drivers have created strong growth within ready to mix protein powders. These powders are becoming more mainstream, and category proliferation has created an environment where more consumers are purchasing both everyday and performance nutrition positioned protein products at grocery stores and mass retailers. But that doesn't mean that the steep growth trajectory of late within the powder format at those large retail channels will go on forever. Because while I don't mind mixing up a protein shake, it would be silly to overlook the extra friction point for a lot of especially new to category mainstream consumers, thus causing a lower household penetration ceiling compared to RTD liquids. I don't think we are anywhere near the top yet, but it is interesting that ready to mix powders grew only 3% this quarter. Also, protein powders are still going to be primarily bought online. So I wouldn't apply the same lower ceiling to a multi channel retail environment. With the BellRing Brands portfolio containing a strong player in both subsegments of convenient nutrition, ready to mix buyers, aka performance and everyday, it's benefiting twice from this marketplace tailwind. But let's stick with the Premier Protein theme and break down the performance of that brand's protein powders first. And actually, it has grown to such a stature that BellRing Brands leadership has decided to start providing us with a set of graphics that shows the format's retail takeaway performance in various large retail channels. As you can see, Premier Protein powders are charging hard, up 52% year over year in the quarter behind brand investments, distribution gains, and strong velocities. Premier Protein powders continue to bring mainstream consumers into the category, with 80% of its growth coming from new buyers. This created growth in both mass retailers, up 66%, in e-commerce, up 80%, but also above average categorical performance in grocery, up 14%. Furthermore, BellRing Brands leadership stated on the earnings call that internally, they are getting really excited about the opportunity emerging with Premier Protein powder SKUs. They have proven to be both incremental to RTD shake sales and beneficial towards growing the brand's household penetration. Premier Protein powders reached 1.7 points of household penetration, but don't scoff at that number because it has already surpassed the same metric from Dymatize. But don't take that for a like comparison because Premier Protein is a much more known convenient nutrition brand overall that's now getting deeper into powders. Alternatively, the Dymatize brand is a lot narrower, focusing on the more sophisticated performance consumer. But maybe this is a good time to transition into analyzing the recent performance of those Dymatize protein powders. As mentioned earlier, categorical growth within large retail channels has greatly benefited a brand like Dymatize that's strategically aligned from a sales channel strategy perspective. Dymatize has seen huge consumption gains across almost all retail channels over the last 52 weeks and is now the top selling or second ranked performance protein brand in most of its key retailers. Over the last 13 weeks, mass retail was up 28.7% and grocery was up 7.4%, but faced challenges in wholesale, club, specialty, and e-commerce that caused total retail consumption to decline 8.3% year over year. The club channel has been a bit choppy for Dymatize as of late, so I'm going to kind of skip over that one and focus on specialty first. And for the last 52-week period, the only blemish is coming from specialty channel. That might be shocking for you old school sports nutrition industry professionals that remember Dymatize from the 2000s going into the 2010s, but that shrinking sales channel is no longer a major priority of the brand, and I fully expect that specialty will continue to struggle from a comparative standpoint into the future. And then on online, because BellRing Brands fiscal Q2 falls within the new year, new you resolution period, there's always this like huge spike in competition for those categorical customers. That means a lot of the emerging kind of smaller supplement brands doing deep discounting online, but you also have this like continuation of a lot of deal seeking because of the macroeconomic environment. So Dymatize decided they weren't interested in participating in this marketing race to the bottom and preferred to stay with a more disciplined long-term approach to its growth. But overall, despite the untracked channel softness, continuing marketplace tailwinds, such as performance protein powders becoming more mainstream and overall category proliferation, plus strong large retail performance this quarter, were central reasons why total distribution points and all commodity volume percentage for Dymatize reached all-time highs for the brand. And then one final note about Dymatize, leadership hinted that they were putting the final touches on innovation that will expand Dymatize's product line. What it is exactly? Well, if you follow me on LinkedIn, you would have seen an image where I included an unreleased rough render of an RTD protein beverage from Dymatize that will include its flavor license partnership with Pebbles cereal. I always say that demand growth breeds commercialization activity, and now that supply constraints are lessening in the product format, you should very much expect more competition is coming within performance nutrition brands in the RTD liquid subcategory. But maybe this is a good transition into a quick BellRing Brands operational update and then what I was referring to in that introductory statement. Firstly, the gross profit margin in the quarter was 33.2% of net sales, which was up 280 basis points year over year. This higher gross profit margin was driven by net input cost deflation, which was partially offset by incremental promotional activity. In terms of a sequential quarter over quarter gross profit margin, that was 120 basis points lower. As I've detailed in the past, Premier Protein has been partnering with the biggest and most reputable players in the industry to make large CAPEX investments, which has now given them a scalable, regionally diverse supply chain that will enable many years of robust growth. And you might be thinking, what does this have to do with Premier Protein getting too close to the sun and getting burnt? Well, generally speaking, business growth is a sign of success. However, when supply is still constrained and demand is greater than expected, you can get yourself into trouble very quickly. This past quarter, Premier Protein tried to push the boundaries on promotional activity and continue launching new flavors that excite the marketplace, all without the needed retailer and internal inventory buffers. Because of that, Premier Protein likely will need to pull back on promotional activity in the second half of its fiscal year. And I'd caution them to kind of slow down, maybe a lot, rebuild inventory levels with the production ramp up, and get ready for the 2025 new year, new you period. Why? I think 2025 has an interesting setup brewing within the RTD protein beverage marketplace. As mentioned earlier, I believe there will be a lot more brand competition within the protein categories format. Also, I believe mass and grocery retailers will start to give RTD protein beverages more placements outside of the typical healthy living or pharmacy space. And then finally, all these activities will be blanketed with likely higher protein input costs. So things should be fun, kind of to say the least. But I hope you enjoyed this YouTube video. If you did, consider hitting that like button to support me. Also help me get to my new short-term goal of 4,000 subscribers by hitting that subscribe button. I'd love to see you join me on this journey, but we need to fix the fact that slightly over 90% of you that are watching this YouTube video right now are not subscribed to my channel, and that makes me extremely sad. But I do want to thank you for tuning in, and I'll see you on the next one.